My family also moved a lot during, I mean, of course, the migration 47, and then in the 70s, my uncle and aunt moved to US. My father was in the US back and forth. So this was always there. And I wanted to come to India and stay here for a bit. And there was a strong spiritual calling after doing 3, 4 Vipassana 10-day courses.
Okay.
And I think that gave me this nomadic life experience, which I loved.
They're also political in many ways. I think every writing is political in some way or the other.
Of course, intensity and things like that, heaviness there too, and darkness is always going to be around. And then suddenly you open it and you find a memory with it, and it's like, wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think there should be a book written on bookmarks.
So, Iffat, we first met, we know each other because of your book. So, and the first question that comes to mind is this fact that though it's a novel, it's a very personal one, almost a memoir. So the question really, the question of how you came to write the novel, I think that is a very important one then. So, and there is a lot of your childhood experience behind it. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So the way the process went for me was, I didn't start writing it until I was in my late 30s. And for a long time, like you said, a lot of me is in it. So right now I feel it's 25%, 75% fiction. And for me to take that journey from it being 70% a memoir type thing to 30 fiction, I think I had to really sort of process a lot of things and take out a lot of the things that I was carrying. The burden of grief, inheritance of grief, was one, for example. A lot of preconditioned ideas that I was taught, and we all are when in the subcontinent and everywhere else, about certain countries or certain viewpoints, that this is right, this is wrong. And I think the fact that I started writing when I was young. I used to write a column that were 700 words for a newspaper in Bangladesh. But to do long form, like a novel or short story, I realized from my own, I wouldn't even dare show it to an editor, but just being my own editor, when I would come back to it, I would see how much of the burden was in it. And when I was younger, I was more fiery. But with age, I also understood, I think, that maybe there's no need, it's not necessary to have that fire if it's not helping in a positive manner, or is it what I want? So I think the process of still figuring it out, what to put out there and what are the few things that I would like people to walk away with, was something that was very personal of a journey for me, and a bit spiritual as well, to sort of dig, and then bring it to a point where it felt like, okay, this seems lighter than a burden, and this seems like it has hope in the end, which can be looked at as too simple for some people, but I think I am a hopeful person, so for me it felt true.
Yeah.
So that's how that.
I'm actually curious about this. Your novel, for instance, it's all about the grief of the Bangladesh Liberation War. You live in Pondicherry, where you say you wrote the novel. And the novel was also a process of healing. So how did these two match? You're coming to Pondicherry and you're writing of the novel.
Yeah, I don't think I could have written this version of it, if I was not in Pondicherry.
Okay.
I was actually looking for a third country, I think.
Okay.
Being a citizen of US, somehow I started the novel there. It wouldn't happen there. I didn't finish it there. Bangladesh is so crazy. I think the novel's theme would change every other day, influenced by the things that were happening that always gets us riled up there. Now, so Pondicherry happened to me in a very interesting way. I was working in refugee crises around in Africa and then in Asia. And I think one of the reasons was also to understand the lives of refugees, because a part of my family was that, coming from India to Bangladesh in 47. And I was really done with everything at that one point. I thought, okay, I was turning 40 that year, and I wanted to come to India and stay here for a bit. And there was a strong spiritual calling after doing 3, 4 Vipassana 10-day courses.
Okay.
And I happened to end up in Pondicherry by a recommendation of a journalist who I haven't seen since.
Okay.
We met at that crisis, that last crisis. I
Okay.
asked him if he knew a place in India, he's Indian, by an ocean, where I could park myself and explore a bit of myself and write. And he sent me a picture of Pondicherry, and it looked
Okay.
right. And I took a flight and I came with a visa. And in Pondicherry, there is a Sri Aurobindo ashram, and his work really inspired me. And the place itself was so easy on the soul that I just, and especially after this, the long kind of work of development and humanitarian crises and so
Okay.
many stories in my head, it felt like I needed that time. So that's how Pondicherry has influenced, and phases of the novel are also. I saw the reflection of it's a place where you can't be too angry for too long, and I think the book was so heavy that after a while it felt like it doesn't suit my life now. This is not who I am, because every year I keep on changing. We all do,
Yeah.
but when you're in Pondi, I think you hear yourself more because the place is quiet. So that's how. But I would love to ask you, because you have changed my life, with the picking up the book. And, I think Penguin was always a thing for us when we were growing up with the logo, and always hoping that one day, you would have this. And it happened because of you. You're my editor, and I'm always grateful for that. I want to know your process, how, because you were a journalist for almost 20 years.
For more than 20 years.
Right. And then you transitioned into being an editor.
Yeah, so it's been 4 years that I've been an editor at Penguin, and just like you said, we all saw the Penguin logo. For me also, it was vintage, the imprint vintage. So I remember I had just got off a flight in Lucknow. I was in Lucknow for a reporting assignment, and I got off the flight and I got a call from Penguin asking if I would be interested in looking after the vintage imprint. Now we've all grown up reading the most fabulous books published internationally by Vintage, and for me, it was not a question at all immediately. I
Right.
knew I wanted to do this, so. And I'm really happy. It's been the best decision I've made. While I was a journalist, I was also it's not like publishing was completely a different experience for me from my journalism work, because I was a books and arts editor at several places, Hindustan Times, Mint, etc. So I had a foot in the publishing industry already, and I think it was the right time with all that 2 decades of experience in journalism, which I could bring into my publishing career. And it's been 4 extremely busy, but extremely, amazing years in publishing right now.
I think, it's been so beyond everything. And it's like debut writers are insecure. There's no question about it. You don't know if it's gonna. First of all, whatever you're writing, does it even make sense? And then slowly, one step at a time, your confidence is built or your belief is built. But once it's out, it's just nothing is in your control so much in this day and age of social media and all of that. I think in the beginning, I was doing a bit of promotions, and I still do a little bit, but I realized that's not something I wanted to do because. I think the book is an entity of its own now, and she goes places. I refer to her as she.
Okay. That's
Shurjo.
very Bengali of you, putting a gender to.
Well, no, we don't. Yeah, true. So she has her own journey, and I
Yeah.
think it happened more of being shortlisted for Tatas,
Yeah.
and when I got really attached to it at that point because it felt like me, and then not getting it also taught me something like, oh, maybe this best first book, did I even write to compete, for example. So that taught me a lot. Actually, it was interesting because before that, it was all these lovely, comments of readers or good interviews and reviews, which I was
Yeah.
very lucky, so grateful for each one of them. And this was
Yeah.
one that was sort of like, oh, and then it was like, wait, why am I so affected? And then realizing that how much we want to just hold on to what we have created, and it has its own life. So yes, holding hands now, of
Yeah.
course, but not like maybe trying to like cling on to it, and started to work. The next novel helped with that also, to
Okay.
dive in, and there was something waiting to be written. I felt so. I think it has helped to sort of move on, learn. That was my first book novel to where I figured out the process of writing. So it's very
Okay.
new. So I want to understand it. So I think that also separates me a little bit from what is created already. It's my first step, and now I'm learning more about the process.
Okay, so writing the second novel, is it different? Are you more confident? Do you know what you're doing? Because we spoke about the fact that Shurjo's Clan, what got published, was not your first draft at all. It was completely rewritten, and it was you poured your heart out in your first draft, and then you did something else with it. Do you feel the writing of the second novel has been a much more confident, assured process?
I think so. I think
Okay.
definitely, yes. First of all, I think I enjoyed starting writing more as I was finishing Shurjo, because I
Okay.
got into this rhythm where it felt right, and I think found a voice that also was what I wanted
Okay.
to be, more of me, or authentic. It felt right. I don't know if it's original or authentic to everybody else, but for me, it felt like a truer voice. So sharpening that was really, it was like, okay, I found this, and I know how it feels when I like it, like what I'm writing. It also, I know also when I don't like it. So I think those two things, knowing it and then diving into the second novel, when I can see that it's not working, I abandon it maybe
Okay.
faster, and I don't hold on to things when I'm like, yeah, this will work out. Where I was doing in maybe the first one, like, we'll make it work. I think it's easier now to know what might and might not work.
Okay.
So let's see if it all makes sense at the end. But yeah, I think I had more fun with it. And also, I feel like Shurjo was something I was carrying, and now that it's put down, and the voice it wants to tell more. So, and it's maybe not. There is, of course, intensity and things like that, heaviness there too, and darkness is always going to be around with light, but it's not maybe as like emotionally draining, because the stories aren't maybe as based on such close relatives or wars and things like that. Yeah. So yeah.
So what is your writing process like, in the sense, when you write, do you like to share drafts with people to read, or would you rather keep it with you, and until you are absolutely sure that this is what you want, someone else's eye to go through?
So I sometimes share pieces, maybe just a page with a friend or so, but mostly non-writer friends, people
Okay.
who have known me for a long time and have seen my life, go on from beginning of like trying to write to now. So I'm lucky to have a few friends like that in my life, and so
Okay.
maybe share, and who are very avid readers. So it's nice to share those with them. I'm always afraid to share with writers friends, big writer friends, because I feel like I'm not sure if I can take it. And often, especially writers who are way more accomplished and been in this for way longer, will have strong opinions, and that can steer me away from maybe what I had thought, because
Yeah.
I'm not maybe strong enough to also refuse their suggestion,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I want to be influenced. So
Yeah.
no, but somebody with a very neutral perspective, yes, and of course, then sharing it with my agent, or sharing it with an editor would be the next step. But to know, I think I see the bigger picture a little better now than I was doing with Shurjo. But I don't know. We'll see with the second draft. But yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to ask you also that about you know this is an interesting thing where I'm sure you come upon manuscripts which are great, but then you have issues of grammar and all of these things. How much does that affect uh, an editor from choosing something? Like, how bad does it have to be grammatically, or but you see the soul and the essence, because we are all, our native language is different and English is a second language.
Yes.
So how do you choose, and when do you give it up, when
Yeah.
you find things?
Uh, no, particularly with fiction, because I do publish a lot of nonfiction, so where it's easy to choose, because nonfiction is, I think, when you're commissioning a work, it is less about the writing and more about the substance of it, about your subject, but particular literary nonfiction, the writing of it matters as well. For instance, a few months ago, I published this book called The Heart Tantrums by a Pakistani writer called Aisha Sarwari. And it is about misogyny in marriage, so it's a memoir by a non-famous person. A biography which is not a celebrity biography is, I wouldn't take it on unless it's beautifully written. Now, this book is, the writing of it is so powerful that it was an immediate yes for me. I couldn't put it down. Once I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. When it comes to fiction, of course, I think I've been lucky that in finding a lot of really good fiction coming my way. But I also, a lot of the fiction I published, they're also political in many ways. I think every writing is political in some way or the other. So somewhere that non-fiction editor's mind also steps in. Because I want to publish a book because of the subject, and it has to be competently written. And I know that if the core story and the way the story is told is powerful enough, then I can work on it. But it's important to publish this piece of work. Because I publish a lot of fiction in translation as well. I think that becomes important for me. So languages like Malayalam, Tamil, there's a lot of translations that happen. But I'm also, last year I published a novel which was translated from the Nepali. And people don't think of Nepali as an Indian language, but it's a book set in Darjeeling. It is set around the Gorkhaland movement. It was a failed political movement for a separate state, and it was a violent movement, and it got suppressed, and the state of Gorkhaland did not happen. But this is a novel which looks at how political leaders really use the people in a sense. So I thought it was important, that was a beautifully written novel, I must say. So I think there are these various factors that come into play.
Sure. I mean,
So
if you're moved and the subject is something that will
yeah.
resonate, yeah,
Yeah.
and
And as an editor, it's my job to edit.
right, of
you know?
course, of course, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
So, yeah, so tell me a bit about your move to India. I know you moved here because you came to Aurobindo Ashram, and
Yes.
but you've stayed on.
I
So
have, I have.
yeah, so and your novel is also about home and belonging, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
um,
yes.
you moved from Bangladesh to the US, but which was early in your life, and
Yes.
you now made India your home, so
Yes.
this idea of home and belonging, how
It's
does that work for you?
Yeah, it's a very complex thing
Yeah.
for me, I think, and my family also moved a lot during, I mean, of course, the migration 47, and then in the 70s my uncle and aunt moved to US. My father was in the US back and forth. So this was always there. And then I think the longest I stayed put anywhere was US, until I started working and moving around. And I think I was always searching for like a third country. I traveled a lot, and alone, almost to 40 countries, and not all alone in all 40, but maybe half of them
This is for work.
for work, and then some would be just not work. Like I would add on another week and do something, in that continent, where if I was in somewhere interesting. And I think that gave me this nomadic life experience, which I loved. And I carried things with me that grounded me. Like there's a little wooden tagore that my grandfather had made, and I would carry that, or like, a leaf that I had
He
from.
made it himself.
He made it himself.
Okay.
So there'd be like this little box of knickknacks that I had, and I would, everywhere I went, I would set it up and make it my home, and that went on for a few years. So it was like, okay, traveling home, and I realized that often when I would go return to my mom, which is what a home for me is to a point. Sometimes when I think of her, where she lives in the U.S., there was always this filling up of love and energy, but then it was sort of like I had moved out when I was 19 for college, and I never lived with her. So I knew it had to be another place for me. And when I came to Pondi, because Pondicherry is a place where a lot of people have moved to, like me, they've just come from everywhere, including Auroville. I think there's a process that already happens, that's in the air, that helps you create something new, and it supports you while you make another home. And nobody looks at you like, oh, but you're a newcomer, and how are you coping with it. They're like, oh, this is what you have to do if you want to live here. And there are like a lot of people like you here. So
Okay.
I think that helped settling into Pondicherry for me. Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I like your. I remember you were reading in the morning from your book, and I saw your bookmark, which was a twig. You
Yes.
know,
Yes, I'm like a master of collecting things. I know
collecting.
exactly where that twig is from
Oh, you
also.
do. Okay. Yeah, but I must say we share that, because when I'm in a new place, or even when I'm in Delhi where I live, and I'm walking with my eye to the ground,
Yes.
and
There's so many
I'm
treasure.
collecting stones and flowers, and so we do have that
This
in
in
common.
common,
My
yeah.
all my books in bookshelves, you'll find petals and leaves which
Same
I've
here.
put in there, and
Same here. And then suddenly you open it and you find a memory with it, and it's like, wow.
yes, yes,
Yes, yeah. I
absolutely.
think there should be a book written on bookmarks.
Yeah.
Or like at least an essay, that it's such a
Yeah,
beautiful thing. I think all of us who do
yeah,
collect these things, and how
yeah,
it's a poetry
yeah,
itself. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And do you also work with poetry?
I I do, So I mean, that's a so I personally don't consider myself a poetry editor, because I think you need to be trained in a sense to be a poetry editor. But the fact is, there's nobody publishing poetry, So, and one of the first books I published when I was in Penguin. So I joined the year the pandemic started, So I joined Penguin, and within a month or a couple of months, the lockdown happened, And K. Sachidanandan and Nishi Chawla, they decided to collaborate on a global anthology of poetry, and this was poets from across the globe responding to the pandemic, so and this was a global lockdown, so it was interesting that that the responses in by poets in another part of the country were experiences of people in India as well. Of course, there were in India we did have other distinct experiences like that of the migrant laborer, which was even more tragic, but there were but this was a collection of poetry, which was anthology of poetry, which was not only tragic because it was joyous as well, because here we as humans were locked in, and from our window we would see nature kind of reviving, and animals flourishing, so there was a lot of joy in that book as well, so as I said, that was one of the first books I did publish, as a result of which I started getting a lot of submissions from poets, and I continue to do so, because there aren't many editors in mainstream publishing houses who publish poetry. That's also because it is a very niche readership, so so you cannot afford to publish too many of books where the sales will be very low, but so I thought maybe I should try and publish, say, one book of poetry in a year, if I can, So, but then that book should be good, I published a debut collection of poetry by this young poet called Abhinav
I met him
Datta.
in Goa last
Ah,
year.
yes,
Yes.
yes, he lives in Goa,
Yes.
and very talented. Almost psychedelic collection. I mean, the poetry has this very hallucinatory, psychedelic element to it. You may read a poem, you may not fully understand it, but there is something in it which hits you, So, very interesting. I mean, he received the Vijay Nambisan fellowship as well, And I remember when I read him, I thought of Vijay Nambisam because there were similarities. I published Varavara Rao's collection of, so we decided to, so I worked with Meena Kandasamy and Varavara Rao's nephew, N. Venugopal, on this book, So it's a collection of his poetry from years, So we published that last year, So I remember being very moved by, because there were all these newspaper reports coming on him, and I would read some poems.
That
So that was a
inspired.
good collection. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well,
Wonderful.
thank you so much,
No, thank
Ifit,
you.
for
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
conversation,
Yeah,
and
same here. It's, we're
and
always learning and there's always so much.
yeah.
And so, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.